The 90s was when inline skating was at its biggest. You couldn't escape it. 29.1 million participants, TV shows, movies, the money was rolling in.
We made $13.5 million.
And where there's a healthy scene and money to be made, you'll find brands, and lots of them. Here are some of the best 90s rollerblading brands.
All the stunts are performed by professionals. Do not attempt this yourself.
There was a lot of great boot bands with all manner of designs, some more aesthetically pleasing than others, but we're going to be focusing on the brands outside of this. Starting off with a big favourite and another worldly brand, Cozmo, well known for their high quality wheels and extraterrestrial influence. The curious mind behind it all was Australian Tim Dorr. Tim was actually an OG skateboarder, and his first ventures into the skate world came in 1978 under the name Osi Skate. Originally manufacturing was outsourced until Tim was like, these wheels are actually gash, man. I'm gonna try and do it myself. So he started making his own urethane, which turned out to be exceptional and a lot better by comparison. 9 years down the line, taking all his top rate wheel pouring skills, he started a skateboard brand called Cockroaches. Very quickly the brand became synonymous with having the greatest urethane going, with some strong graphics as well.
They still rate them as the best skateboard wheels ever.
In 1992, Billy Boy became president, we got Batman Returns, Chris Cross was shaking up the hip hop scene, and a friend of Tim's was like, mate, can you make some wheels for inline skating? Yes I can. I'm going to give you the best wheels ever, and it's going to be called Cozmo.
Why were Cosmos so great?
Tim Dorr, who made them, was a urethane genius, basically.
He was meticulous when creating the wheel. He knew rollerblading had slightly different needs, so the formula was tweaked, and the first ones were hand poured.
He'd mix them up in jugs and pour them into molds by hand.
Just like with the Cockroach wheels, the quality was recognised quickly, and they became the wheel of choice. If you wanted hard-wearing, fast wheels, Cozmo was the one.
They just came incredible. That's just so fast and they wouldn't wear out.
They've always been known for their quality from the moment they arrived on the scene in 1992 until they stopped production in 2006. They've also been known for their alien and UFO inspired graphics. In issue 1 of Daily Bread, Tim explained where the name came from. I have an interest in unusual things, and at first glance the wheel reminded me of a UFO. I feel the name Cozmo relates to the times to come. It's a new product in a new world. Now when he says he was interested in unusual things, others would say he was a devout conspiracist. He had collections of secret VHS tapes on alien autopsies, UFO landings, footage of the JFK assassination, all sorts. I mean, the iconic Cozmo Wheels logo was an alien fashioned to look like him, and their tagline was extraterrestrial performance. He absolutely loved it, man. Amongst his collection was a stack of classified government documents, which he shared a few of with a young inquisitive team rider, Arlo Eisneberg. He was particularly intrigued by the documents regarding a specialist team who were put in charge of investigating alien activity. It was the code name of this team that helped inspire the name of a skate Arlo was working on with Roces, the Majestic 12. Cozmo's graphics and marketing was full of aliens and UFOs. It was instantly recognisable and gave us some of the most iconic designs. My favourite was the 3 alien heads, and the flywheel graphics was so good. You had Julio's signature tee, an alien with white headphones on by a fire hydrant, Rene Holgren's tee, the Viking in the UFOs, all came with matching wheels, and the team was really impressive. Julio and Rene, like I've mentioned, and of course the biggest names in Australia, Tim Ward, Tom Fry, Scott Crawford,
Big Manuel Bitteris.
Cozmo had it all going on. Interestingly, in Easter of 2022, Cockroach wheels made a return, with the original wheels being poured again in Australia. Could we see Cozmo make a return? Just like Biggie and Pac, on the west coast you had Senate, and on the east coast you had FR.
And if you're FR, you're FR till you die. And if you're Senate, you're Senate till you die.
What is FR? You know, it's like, it's just these 2 letters. It's no real meaning. It's not fuck rollerblade. It's not finding rehab. It's not financial ruin.
Now FR was the New York brand. It was all about being real and being out there in the streets. The brand was started by Nick Hartman when he left the rollerblade stunt team, hence suggestions FR meant fuck rollerblade.
Nick Hartman, who started FR, went to rollerblade to try to get the wheels to come on the skate. They turned it down. his first reaction was like, fuck rollerblade. And then the F and the R just stuck.
That's sick.
It legit was, in a sense, started that way, but wasn't what the company stood for.
Everyone on FR embodied the idea of true street skating, and in the words of Nick, had city fluency. This was all about how you saw the lay of the land and how you adapted to your immediate environment. The ability to cruise around, taking on ledges, stairs, traffic, gaps, and all those moments in between spots. Two names that personified the brand the most were Dave Ortega and Ryan Jackalone, staunchly New York skaters.
Ryan is an in-your-face guy. He is in your face, and that is a New York trait.
Oh, and of course, style master Gil Vasquez. Oh my goodness, the backslides he could do. FR had the vision, the team, and the gear to match. A really strong, simple logo that looked great on any piece of merchandise, even on a chain, and that came in a couple of variations, but their most memorable designs were the Peace Love FRT and the Your Wheels Suck Tee. Obviously they had loads of great wheels, and the first asymmetric anti-rocker wheel. They were originally called rings and were really popular. Then the same profile was used for Dave Ortega's pro wheels, and they called them pinkies.
Why were they called the pinkies?
I just like pink.
The asymmetrical design would give better forgiveness as the grind was initiated, and then more stability once you were in the trick. They also came in two sizes, and the plan was that you'd build up to a flat setup basically, but anti-rocker ended up sticking around.
No, I skated anti-rocker for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're into the vids and you'd like to support me, giving us a like really does help. I've also got merch. There's also a Patreon. You can become a YouTube member as well. Sneak peek exclusive videos again. Without that support, I simply couldn't do these videos. So cheers. The 90s was a superb time for rollerblading clothing, and at the end of 1994, starting 1995, we got another great brand in 976 Launderings. It came from the same house as Senate and Medium and was distributed exclusively by Tribe Distribution, but this time it wasn't Mark Heineken, it was actually his wife Vera who was heading up the project. Riders included the like of Mike Opalek, Brian Smith, Angie Walton, Dave Colash, Jess Dyrenforth. Shane Coburn snuck himself in there for a little bit of modelling as well. The brand took great pride in being for aggressive inline skaters. We're not skateboarders, snowboarders or surfers, so why should we wear their clothes? Fucking too right, mate. Yeah, stuff those other people like. 976 seemed to make absolutely everything in terms of clothing and apparel. Wallets, belts, bags, visors, caps, beanies, flat caps. A pretty decent collection of eyewear. That is very rare. You don't see much of that these days, and I'd love a pair of those, man. Of course they had jeans, a rocker hoodies and t-shirts. It was a range you just don't see from brands these days, but at the time, rollerblading was on top, so things were kind of limitless. It was all designed with the help of the pros on the team and to suit the needs and lifestyle of skaters, and that's why it translated to the consumer. It felt authentic and it felt like you were buying into something real and good. My first memory of seeing 976 was that John Ortiz ad from 1997. The kind of bird's eye view of him doing a soul in oxygens with his 976 backpack on, a 976T with all the numbers intertwined. It was such a classic image. The most iconic bits for me personally were the All-Star Ringers tee, the Formula 3 caps, the All-Star beanie and the soccer jersey. If you had a bit of 976, you definitely knew what the score was, walking around like proud as punch. I'd go for it now, man. The Prez, John Julio, has been part of many brands and events over the years, but one of the first brands he was part owner of with Brooke Howard-Smith and Jess Dyrenforth was England Clothing. The England team consisted of Julio, Latimer and Petty, which was a sick team at a time, and looking back at it now with their status, that's outrageous, man. All the gear was top notch, really clean and simple designs with an obvious like regal feel to it. Everyone who was part of that brand was involved with the design process, and you could tell they wore it with pride. Again, this translated to the consumer, and you just wanted to have it and be a part of that movement. The brand and those skaters was fully cemented with the release of Volume, England Clothing team video in 1997. Another classic. I remember I had to wait for sales to get a hold of any kind of England merch, so you're always left with odd sizes, and I ended up getting like a quadruple XL England hoodie. I was drowning in fabric, but I absolutely loved it, which is funny though because it looked dangerously similar to the kind of tourist merch you'd get all over London.
Oh, and that England 5-panel cap, oh my goodness, absolute gold.
Now these days, grind plates are basically non-existent. But back in the 90s, when frames had the same durability as a bourbon biscuit, grind plates were fairly big news. Little bit of a history lesson, the first grind plates actually started out as a winch that came on rollerblade skates. You'd use it in combination with an Allen key to remove your wheels, but it was soon repurposed when people worked out it fit perfectly between the bolts of the two middle wheels and could protect your frame while grinding. From then, aftermarket grind plates started appearing from the likes of 50/50, Scribe, Blood, 4Dub, Senate. Everyone was getting involved, but it was CDS Detriot who took it to a whole nother level. They were the pick and mix of grind plates. You had Repos, Burgundies, Blue Angels, Woodies, and even clear ones. A whole host of protection to suit your tastes and needs. They also did some of the most rudimental sole kits that kind of look like a hinge. Bit of a quiz. Have you ever heard of an inline skating brand called Sumo? Probably not. That's because they only lasted one ad in issue 6 of Daily Bread before they ran into trademark issues. They were backed by issue 7 though, and now under the more well-known name Fiction. The brand arrived in 1995 and was the idea of Garrett, who was actually credited with inventing the Mizu grind while in Japan on a groove tour. Mizu meant water, and it was the only Japanese word that he knew at the time. Inspired by Pat Parnell pushing skaters to lead the industry, Chris started making high quality, affordable clothing that would give skaters our own identity, separating them from surfing, skateboarding, and the media's idea of what rollerblading was. It was for rollerbladers by rollerbladers. In order to grow in a positive direction, we as rollerbladers need to influence the direction, overall image, and product innovation to secure longevity for the industry. Another iconic figure in rollerblading, Dave Paine, became a huge part of Fiction after Chris met him at the Bottom Line photo shoot. Dan Jensen, the main man behind Harvesting the Crust, produced the first Fiction ads, most of the Fiction graphics and websites, playing a huge role in development of Fiction clothing. So this brand had some real heavy hitters involved. When talking to the LA Times in 1996, Fiction was growing so fast he could hardly keep up with the orders and was ordering up to 5,000 t-shirts for a single production run. That is huge numbers, especially compared to these days. In more recent years, Official Sunday Brunch even made a homage cheat as nod to their impact. I was gutted at the time, and I'm still gutted now actually, when somebody stole my beloved Fiction hoodie. You prick. If we're going top choice fit from these 90s brands, you'd have all the ones mentioned before, like FR, 976, get a bit of Cozmo on there as well, but you'd also have like Senate, Medium, Rise Above, maybe some Hangers Cords, maybe a Blood t-shirt if you weren't in like a gang affiliated area, little bit of Hardline. Whew. Much like Cozmo, Kyrptonics were actually an OG skateboard brand. They were established in 1965 and had the first urethane skateboard wheel in 1976. They had a massive impact on skateboarding, and the same again when they got involved in inline skating around 1993. I believe the first inline wheel was the Crypto Little Rocks that came with a funny little marketing interview from Kevin Lee. They quickly became known for their quality and developed a great team with the likes of Matty Mance, Matt Solano and Dawn Everett. My first ever aggressive skates, Inliner Vertex, actually came stock with bright orange Kyrptonics, and I couldn't believe my luck.
You're lucky.
I'm lucky.
Beyond the quality of the wheels and the great team, like a lot of brands in the 90s, a whole host of effort was put into the packaging. You had the Lyra vs Vega wheels that came in a pyramid with aliens on the side of it. Then you had the Mezcal wheels that came in the Mezcal bottle with one wheel in each set having a worm inside it, just like you'd get in a bottle of tequila. Hyper was another standout brand when it came to wheel quality, and they had some utterly ridiculous names which would probably be a little bit problematic these days. They had a series called Freak Show. It had Hyper Fat Boys, Hyper Midgets, Hyper Giants, Fire Breathing Girls, One-Eyed Dog and Two-Headed Pig. They also had Hyper Dwarf wheels. Interestingly, the first skates to ever come stock with anti-rockers were the Bauer frontside and the K2 Soul Slide, both using Hyper wheels. Hyper also had a solid team in Brian Bell, Rawson Riviera and Aaron Feinberg, plus a sick logo which looked great on a tee. Rollerblading has a funny relationship with wearing protection. It's sensible given the nature of skating, but also seems to go against its core of what it was originally all about. So the idea of trying to get people to wear it is a pretty hard sell. However, as in the chest piece, did a pretty bang up job of getting people to want to buy their gloves and wrist guards. I thought those things looked absolutely banging as a kid. If I could have afforded a pair, I would have wore them everywhere. Wear them for a little bit of light sparring. Wear them while you're watching Home Alone. Wear them while you're arm wrestling. Type an email fast as fuck with those things on. Use them for a better grip on a pint while you're out. Just wear them walking down the street so you look a bit dangerous, a little bit unhinged like. The quality of them was exceptional. All leather, double stitching, abrasion resistant Kevlar patch. Some serious stuff for a little bit of rollerblading, man. Those things would keep your palms soft like hot bread. Again, they also had really great merch. A strong logo that worked well on like headwear, belts and hoodies, great graphic tees, and a ridiculous team adding further credibility like Julio, Fabiola, Champion, Mike Scott, Jackalone. 50/50 are probably most well known for frames, but they were actually founded on grind plates. As we've discussed, frames in the early 90s were about as strong as mayonnaise. It felt like they were made out of eggs and oil and wouldn't stand up to a fart from a dog. But they were actually founded on grind plates. So around 1994, Jess Dyrenforth and Ted Simpson set about making grind plates. Ted Simpson was a skater and worked at CNC Company, so he had a unique advantage of having access to lots of interesting materials. The first ones were half metal, half plastic, hence the name 50/50. In 1995, 50/50 products were hitting the stores. The UHMW grind plates flew off the shelf, and they ended up making pro grind plates for all the team riders. But even then they knew the grind plates was just a bit of a distraction from the fact that frames were woeful. If you know about 50/50 these days, you might be wondering like, where's Lawrence Ingraham in this whole story? He was on board since 95, initially as a freelance designer, getting more and more involved as the years went on, and then when Ted left in 1999, him and Jess became the sole owners. After success with grind plates, they got stuck into the frames. They started making new HMW ones, but had to make base plates to fit all the different skates, so the first kits were around $100. This was a little bit pricey for some people, and shots were already a little bit resistant to go down the aggressive skating path. They changed the frames to nylon to reduce the price, but kept the UHMW base plates and called it the Juice System. Who doesn't want to ride something called the Juice System, mate? Conor McGregor's on the Juice System, like. They had every frame colour going, man. They were inspired by Skittles, and they had a scarily good team. John Elliott, Petty, Julio, Fabiola, Shima, Spicer. 50/50 actually worked with Solomon to introduce the UFS frame system, which opened up the gates for competition for them, but they were always about making skating great. We were skaters passionate about making quality products, not businessmen, and ultimately the big companies had big budgets and lured some of our top skaters away with lucrative contracts. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. UFS was great for rollerblading as it opened up a much needed aftermarket products and gave skaters more options. Like all great hardware brands at the time, they also had great soft merch, particularly the Balance 50/50 logo. There's plenty of other great inline skating brands that started in the 90s. If I missed one of your favourites, let me know in the comments below. I purposefully didn't go into like Senate, Medium and Mindgame, who kind of snuck in at the end of 1999, because I covered them in this video here. I also didn't really talk about Daily Bread, but that's in this video here. Go and check those ones out. Massive thank you to my Patreons. Without your support, I simply couldn't do this. See you again soon. Spotty Dog.